I'm Lauren. I'm 29 years old, single, no kids, and I work as a pharmacist at a neighborhood drugstore just outside Indianapolis. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, and I genuinely enjoy helping folks make sense of their medications. I live pretty simply, a 700 square foot apartment. I bring my own lunch to work, and I rarely splurge on anything big. But I've always been proud of the fact that I built up a solid savings account by being careful with my money. Now, let me give you the family rundown, because they're smack in the middle of this chaos. My parents live in a small, two-bedroom home they've had for over 30 years. Dad's retired now, spends most of his time parked in front of the television, grumbling about the government or the weather. Mom works a few shifts a week at a Kroger just to keep herself busy. They're not wealthy, but they manage. Then there's my older sister, Jessica. She's 34 and married to Ryan, who does construction when he can find work. They've got two boys, Logan, 8, and Caleb, 6, and Jessica's 5 months pregnant with baby number 3. The boys are sweet, and I love them more than anything. But Jessica and Ryan? They're a financial mess. They rent this cramped little house right next door to my parents, and between Ryan's spotty income and Jessica being constantly overwhelmed, they're always struggling to make ends meet. I've been helping them out for years: school supplies, soccer fees, electric bills. I've even covered their past due water bill more times than I can count. And despite all that, the one thing they love to mock me for? My car. I drove this beat-up 2012 Honda Civic for 8 years. It had peeling paint, one door that groaned louder than a haunted house, and an AC system that only worked when it felt like cooperating. "You still driving that jalopy?" Ryan would tease every time I pulled into the driveway. "That thing's gonna leave you stranded one day," Dad would warn. "Jessica?" She'd just laugh. "I can't believe you show up in that embarrassment." But I stuck with it. I always said I wouldn't buy a new car until the old one died on me. They thought I was being stubborn or cheap, but in reality, I was being smart. I didn't have a car payment, and I was stockpiling cash. Quietly. And then, just last month, it finally happened. I was headed home after my shift when the car started making a horrible grinding sound and suddenly gave out right there at a stoplight on Washington Street. Smoke poured from under the hood. It was dead. I had it towed to my usual mechanic, and after an hour, he shook his head. "Lauren," he said, "it's done. Engine's toast. Not worth fixing." So, there I was, carless. I took the city bus to work for a few days while I figured things out. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wanted to surprise them. I knew how they talked about my car for years, and I thought it'd be nice to finally show them something different. That weekend, I hit the dealerships. I wasn't looking for anything flashy, just something reliable, good on gas, safe, and big enough for the occasional school pickup or weekend baseball run with the boys. And then I saw it. A gently used Honda Pilot. It was a few years old, just under 50,000 miles, roomy, spotless, and came with all the safety bells and whistles. It was perfect. And more importantly, I could pay for it outright. No loans. No monthly bill hanging over my head. That Friday, I signed the papers, grabbed the keys, and drove off the lot feeling 10 feet tall. I had no idea the storm that was about to hit. By the time we sat back down at the table, I could feel a shift in the air. You know how sometimes you walk into a room and just feel tension clinging to the walls? That's what dinner turned into, except I was already sitting at the table. Jessica barely touched her chicken casserole. She just pushed peas around her plate and threw me these sideways glances like I'd personally wronged her by buying myself a car. I tried to brush it off. I was still riding high from that new car glow, leather seats that weren't torn. Bluetooth that actually worked. A backseat that didn't smell like 8 years of drive-through fries. I was proud of that Honda. I worked for it. I earned it. And for the first time in a long time, I had something just for me. After dessert, Mom's famous peach cobbler Jessica suddenly slammed her fork down. Hard. The room went dead silent. "You should give me the car," she said. Just like that. No lead-in, no explanation. Just a flat-out demand, like she was asking me to pass the salt. I thought she was joking. I laughed a little. But when I looked up, her face was serious. Stone cold. You don't have kids, she went on, eyes locked on mine. You don't need that much space, and with the baby coming, we're gonna be packed in like sardines. Our van's falling apart. I looked around the table, waiting for anyone to say something. But Ryan just nodded like she'd made some brilliant point. My parents looked uncomfortable, but not surprised, and that's when it hit me. They'd talked about this before. You're not serious, I said, even though deep down I knew she was. I am, Jessica snapped. You can afford another car, you don't even have anyone to drive around but yourself. That SUV is a waste on you. My mouth went dry. I glanced at my parents again. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes, and Mom gave me this look like don't make a scene. I sat up straighter. I'm not giving you my car. I paid for it. It's mine. Jessica's voice cracked. You're being selfish. I'm pregnant, Lauren. You know how hard it's been for us. And now you're hoarding something you don't even need? I took a breath and tried to stay calm. I've helped you for years, paid your bills, bought your kids' school clothes, paid your electric when it got shut off. But this? This is mine. And the answer is no. That's when Mom chimed in. Quietly, but enough to twist the knife. It would really help them, honey. Maybe you could just lend it for a little while? Until they get on their feet? Lend it? Until what, Jessica's kid hits kindergarten? I looked at my dad. You too? He sighed. You are single, Lauren. You could always get something smaller, they've got a family to think about. And there it was. In that moment, I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was just the backup plan. The fallback wallet. The one with no spouse, no kids, and apparently, no right to say no. I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. I can't believe this, I thought you'd be happy for me. I saved for years to buy something reliable, and all you can see is what you think I don't deserve. Lauren, Jessica started, but I cut her off. I'm leaving. Enjoy the cobbler. I walked out, head held high, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. When I reached my car, I sat in the driver's seat for a long minute, hands gripping the wheel. That Honda Pilot? It wasn't just a car, it was the first thing I did purely for myself, and I wasn't about to let anyone, family or not, guilt me into handing it over. They'd made their position clear. Now it was time I made mine. I barely made it back to my apartment before the barrage began. I'd just kicked off my heels and unzipped my coat when the first call came. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad. Then Jessica. Then all over again. I didn't need to hear the messages to know what they were going to say. By the time I got into sweatpants and poured myself a glass of iced tea, the texts had started. Long, guilt-laced paragraphs from my mother. Lauren, please reconsider, Jessica's struggling and this car would mean the world to her. Then Dad, blunt as ever. You're hurting your family. That's not who you are. And Jessica, naturally playing the pregnancy card. I can't believe you're being so cruel to me when I'm carrying your niece. You're breaking my heart. Message after message. Hour after hour. All of them spinning the same tired narrative, that I was selfish, that I didn't need a family car, that I was heartless for not handing over the one thing I'd worked years to afford. I said nothing. Not one word back. I've learned the hard way that silence is often more powerful than explanation. But they didn't take the hint. For 2 solid weeks, they didn't let up. Every day, more calls, more texts. Think about what's best for the family. You're single, you'll bounce back. Jessica doesn't need this kind of stress right now. It wasn't concern, it was manipulation. They didn't care how I felt. What they cared about was access to my money, my resources, my life, and for the first time, I wasn't giving it to them. Then came Aunt Cheryl. She called me from an unknown number one Wednesday evening while I was folding laundry and watching an old episode of Jeopardy! I answered without thinking. Lauren, honey, she began, in that syrupy voice she uses when she's trying to get something. I heard about what's been going on with your sister. I just wanted to call and ask why not help her out. Just this once. I leaned back against the kitchen counter. Hi, Aunt Cheryl. I've helped her out for years. Paid their gas bill, their grocery tab, even bought the boys new shoes when school started. But this is different, she pressed. She's pregnant. Ryan can't find steady work. You're in a good place financially, and well, don't you think family comes first? There it was. The classic guilt line. Cheryl, I said slowly, I bought that car with my own money. I didn't win the lottery, I saved for it. Skipped vacations, packed my lunch every day, drove that clunker until it literally died. I finally gave myself something nice, and now everyone's trying to rip it out of my hands. She paused, but sweetie, your sister is going through so much, she really needs support right now. I gripped the phone tighter. What she needs is to stop thinking she's entitled to everything I work for. That car isn't hers. My savings aren't hers. My life isn't hers. A long silence stretched between us. So you're really saying no? I've been saying no. No means no. She sighed. I just hate to see this family torn apart over something material. It's not just the car, I snapped. It's the principle. It's the fact that not a single one of them asked how I was doing. Nobody said, congratulations. They just saw something I had and decided I didn't deserve to keep it. I ended the call before she could say another word. Then, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, staring at my phone screen as another text from Jessica rolled in. I didn't open it. Instead, I turned my phone off completely and walked out to the parking lot. The Honda Pilot sat there under the glow of the streetlight, calm and undisturbed. And for the first time in weeks, I exhaled. That car wasn't just transportation, it was a boundary. One I was finally learning to draw. The cab driver circled the lot slowly, headlights sweeping over rows of sedans and SUVs, but my Honda Pilot was nowhere to be found. My stomach dropped. It wasn't like me to panic, but something felt off. I'd parked it in the same space I always used, third row from the building, right under the streetlight. It was muscle memory at this point. But the space was empty. I sat there for a second, trying to convince myself I'd just parked somewhere else and forgotten. Maybe in a rush to catch the flight. Maybe distracted by the dozens of messages I was ignoring. Can you drive around one more time? I asked the driver, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded, probably used to frantic late-night searches like this. We made another loop around the lot. Nothing. It hit me all at once, my car wasn't missing. It was gone. I tipped the driver and stepped out, heart racing as I walked to the front entrance of my apartment building. The air was thick and heavy, humid even for late October. My mind was spinning. Who would steal a car in broad daylight? In a lot with cameras? And then a darker thought crept in, one I didn't want to believe but couldn't shake. I took the stairs two at a time and went straight to the apartment on the first floor, Mr. Whitaker's place. He owned the building and kept the security footage running from a monitor in his office. I knocked, praying he was still awake. Lauren, he said, surprised to see me. Everything okay? My car's gone. I think someone took it while I was out of town. Can we check the cameras? He ushered me in and pulled up the video feed. We rewound to Friday morning around 9 a.m., just after I left for California. What I saw on that screen made my stomach turn. There was my Pilot, parked right where I left it. And then there was Ryan. Clear as day. He strolled up to my car like he owned it. He looked around, pulled something from his jacket, my keys, and unlocked the door like it was his. No struggle, no broken glass. He slipped inside, started the engine, and pulled out of the lot like it was his vehicle. I couldn't breathe. My own brother-in-law had stolen my car. And he hadn't done it alone, he'd used the spare keys I kept in my apartment. Which meant someone had been inside. I asked Mr. Whitaker to help me copy the footage to my phone. He handed me a flash drive, his face pale. You need to call the police. I nodded, but first, I needed confirmation. I called another cab and gave the driver Jessica and Ryan's address. We pulled up 20 minutes later, and there it was. My Honda Pilot, sitting in their driveway like it belonged to them. They hadn't even tried to hide it. I stood there in the dark, fists clenched, staring at the car I had worked years to buy, parked in front of the very people who had demanded I give it away, for the sake of family. The rage that boiled inside me wasn't just about the car anymore, it was about the betrayal, the entitlement. The sheer audacity of walking into my apartment, taking my keys, and thinking I'd never find out. They thought I was weak. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. Remember those spare keys you gave Mom and Dad a few years back? Just in case of an emergency? Jessica's voice dripped with smug satisfaction. Well, this was an emergency. It felt like the air got sucked right out of my lungs. They hadn't just stolen my car. They had broken into my apartment. Violated my space. Used the trust I'd once had in my parents to justify theft. I felt sick. Numb. Then furious. "Give me my keys," I said, my voice low and sharp, the kind of tone you only get when your anger is past the boiling point. Ryan chuckled. "Relax. It's just a car." "No," I said, stepping forward, finger pointed straight at him. "It's my car. And you had no right." "None." Jessica crossed her arms like a teenager caught sneaking out after curfew. "You weren't using it. You were gone. We needed it more than you did." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were trying to rewrite reality. Justify it like it was some noble act of desperation, not a calculated, entitled move. And worst of all, they genuinely believed I wouldn't fight back. Ryan shrugged. "Look, Lauren, we figured you'd get over it once you cooled off. You've always been the responsible one. You'll bounce back, get something better. No big deal." No big deal. They had walked into my apartment, probably rummaged through my drawers, my personal things, took my car keys, then drove away with a $32,000 vehicle that I had worked and saved for over the course of nearly a decade. "You broke into my home," I said slowly. "You stole my car, and now you're standing here, smiling like it's all some big misunderstanding?" Jessica didn't flinch. "We did what we had to do." "You know what?" I said, pulling out my phone. "We'll see what the police think about that." Ryan's face shifted. "You wouldn't. Try me." Jessica stepped in. "You're going to send your own sister's husband to jail over a car? I'm pregnant, Lauren. Don't you care about your niece or nephew at all?" I blinked at her, stunned at how fast she weaponized motherhood to shield themselves from consequences. "Don't you dare throw that at me. If you cared about your kids, you'd be teaching them not to steal." Jessica narrowed her eyes. "No one's going to believe you. We'll just say you gave us the car and then changed your mind. That was it. You really think I'd let you get away with this? I have security footage. Your face, Ryan, right there on camera. Breaking into my vehicle and driving it off the lot." I turned around and walked back toward the curb. My legs were shaking, but I kept moving. As I climbed into the taxi, Ryan called out, "You're blowing this way out of proportion, Lauren." I didn't even respond. I just pulled out my phone and called the non-emergency line for the local police department. "Hi," I said, "I need to report a stolen vehicle. I have proof of who took it, where it is, and how they got it." My voice was steady. Cold. Determined. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was about drawing a line. One they'd finally crossed. They all froze when I said it. Jessica stopped mid-sob, Mom's mouth dropped open, and even Dad, who had been red-faced and pacing like a linebacker ready to charge, stood still. "I'll drop the charges," I repeated, "but only under one condition." "What condition?" Mom asked cautiously, her eyes wide with hope. "You all leave me alone, completely. No more phone calls, no more texts, no showing up at my apartment. You want Ryan out of jail? Fine. But in exchange, I'm done with every single one of you." Silence. You could have heard a paperclip hit the floor in that station lobby. Jessica gasped like I'd slapped her. "Lauren. How can you even say that?" "How?" I said, my voice cool, but sharp. "Because I finally see you all for who you really are. The second I stopped being useful, you turned on me. You didn't ask, you took. You stole from me. You broke into my home. And when I stood up for myself, you made me the villain." Dad stepped forward. "Come on now, you don't mean that. You're just upset." I looked him straight in the eye. I've never been more clear in my life. Detective Harris cleared his throat. "So just to confirm, Miss Lauren, you're willing to drop the auto theft charges in exchange for a no-contact verbal agreement?" "Yes," I said. I want it on record, I'm not pressing charges, but if they contact me again, I will. He nodded and gestured for one of the officers nearby to handle the paperwork. Ryan was going to be released, though they mentioned he'd still face a charge for resisting arrest. Apparently he wasn't too cooperative when they picked him up. After signing everything, I turned back to my family one last time. You made your choice when you picked entitlement over respect. I've got nothing left to give you. Mom was crying now, reaching out for me like I was the one walking away from them. Please, baby. We're still your family. I shook my head. Family doesn't steal, family doesn't lie, and family sure as hell doesn't weaponize pregnancy and guilt to manipulate someone into giving up what they've worked for. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked out of that police station, keys to my car back in my hand, and didn't look back. I got in the Honda Pilot, the one they said I didn't deserve, and just sat there for a moment. My hands on the steering wheel, engine humming softly. It smelled like leather and freedom. It wasn't just a vehicle anymore, it was a symbol of every sacrifice I'd made. Every night I packed lunch instead of ordering takeout. Every time I said no to a new coat or a weekend trip to add another $200 to savings. Every time I kept quiet while they joked about my old car, thinking I was cheap, not strategic. They saw a car. I saw a decade of discipline. I drove home in silence, not because I was sad, but because I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. That night, I blocked all their numbers. Mom, Dad, Jessica gone. I unfriended them, unfollowed them, and scrubbed them out of my digital life like they'd scrubbed away every ounce of gratitude when I didn't hand them the keys. And you know what? Life got quiet. Wonderfully, beautifully quiet. No calls asking for money. No guilt trips. No. Can you just help us out this once? I finally had room to breathe. And as harsh as it sounds, walking away was the kindest thing I've ever done for myself. They stood there, stunned, like I'd just spoken in a language they didn't understand, but I meant every word. I want nothing to do with any of you ever again. Mom shook her head like I was being hysterical. Lauren, don't be dramatic. I stared her straight in the eyes. I'm not being dramatic. I'm done. You all crossed a line I can't uncross. You stole from me, you broke into my home. Then you had the nerve to act like I was the one hurting you. I'm cutting ties. Permanently. Dad's voice got sharp. You can't mean that. I absolutely do. I'll drop the charges against Ryan, but the price is silence. No calls, no texts. Don't show up at my door, don't send someone else to do your talking. We're done. I turned to Detective Harris. I'm ready to sign whatever you need. He nodded and went to finalize the paperwork. Ryan was released later that afternoon. They kept him in holding a little longer than necessary since he'd resisted arrest. Apparently he thought it was all a misunderstanding that could be talked through. Typical. I didn't stick around for the aftermath. I got my car, thanked Detective Harris, and drove straight home. That night, I blocked every single number tied to my family. My parents. Jessica. Ryan. Even a couple of nosy cousins who liked stirring the pot on Facebook. I scrubbed them from my phone, my socials, my inbox. I wasn't angry, I was done. And let me tell you something, the silence was bliss. The following months felt like I could finally exhale after holding my breath for years. No sudden emergencies about unpaid bills. No requests to help out just this once. No guilt trips about missing birthday parties for kids who didn't even remember to thank me for the gifts I sent. I had evenings to myself. I took my first solo weekend road trip to Asheville in my Pilot, just because I could. I listened to music. I cooked for myself. I slept without checking my phone in the middle of the night. I lived. About 5 months later, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I picked it up, expecting maybe a pharmacy rep or a call from a coworker. It was Aunt Cheryl. Her voice was soft, careful. Lauren, honey. I just wanted to let you know, Jessica had the baby. A little girl. I let the words hang in the air. Okay. There was a pause. Don't you want to know her name? Or see a picture? Number. Another pause, longer this time. Lauren, don't you think this has gone on long enough? It's been 5 months, maybe it's time to forgive and forget. That phrase hit me like a slap. They stole my car, Cheryl. They broke into my apartment. They treated me like garbage and expected me to thank them for it. You want me to forget that? But they're your family. No, they're not. Family doesn't treat you like a walking wallet. They stopped being my family the day they decided Jessica's entitlement mattered more than my autonomy. You're really going to throw away your whole family over a car? I took a deep breath. I didn't throw them away. They threw me away the moment they prioritized what they wanted over basic respect. She tried again. But what about the children? Logan and Caleb miss their aunt, and now there's a new baby who'll never know you. That one stung more than I wanted to admit. I did miss my nephews. I missed movie nights and weekend soccer games. But they came attached to parents who would rob me blind with a smile on their face. That's not my choice, Cheryl, I said gently, but firmly. That's Jessica and Ryan's choice. They made it very clear I was just a resource to be mined, and when the well ran dry, they got ugly. Your parents are getting older, she said, her voice starting to tremble. What if something happens to them? Then I guess I'll read about it in the obituaries. She started crying. I could hear it clearly over the line. How can you be so cold? I'm not cold, I'm free. I'm just finally done being a doormat. I spent years giving everything I had: money, time, energy. And the one time I kept something for myself, they tried to take it from me. Then when I said no, they stole it. But you got the car back. It's not about the car, it's about what it represented. That they thought so little of me, they believed I'd just roll over and accept it. Cheryl was silent. Then, quietly, so this is really it. You're never going to speak to them again? That's up to them, they know where I live, they know where I work. If they want to apologize, not excuse, apologize and actually try to make things right, they can try. But I'm not reaching out. I'm not fixing what I didn't break. I ended the call, gently, and sat in my living room with a blanket and a cup of tea. Did I miss parts of that life? Of course. But for the first time in years, I wasn't drowning in someone else's crisis. I'd bought that car for independence. Turns out, I bought my freedom too. Life lesson. Sometimes, choosing yourself is the most loving thing you can do. Lauren's story reminds us that quiet strength isn't always celebrated, but it is powerful. For years, she lived with discipline, saved diligently, and gave generously to her family, asking for nothing in return. But when she finally did something for herself, the very people she helped tried to take it from her. This wasn't about a car, it was about boundaries. Respect. Autonomy. For many of us in middle age, this story hits hard. We've spent decades building stability, often pouring into others, our children, parents, siblings, hoping love and loyalty would be mutual. But Lauren's story teaches a sobering truth: if you never say no, people will assume you never will, and when you finally do, they may call you selfish, cold, dramatic. But choosing yourself isn't cruel, it's courageous. Drawing the line is not the end of compassion, it's the beginning of self-respect. Sometimes walking away is the only way to stop being walked over. In the silence that followed her decision, Lauren didn't just regain her car, she reclaimed her peace, her space, and her life. And that's something we all deserve: the freedom to live without being held hostage by guilt, obligation, or manipulation.